All right, hello, good evening. My name is Catherine and I work with SEB Housing. This is the information session for the 11 affordable rental housing units that are going to be offered in phase 2 of Union 346 in Somerville. On your screen right now, there is information about translation services. So those are available to you if you require information in the language other than English. So I'm going to keep that on the screen. I'm going to scroll down to another slide that has a couple more languages as well. And you can contact us at, as you can see on these prompts here, at union346@sebhousing.com. That's an email address that's specific to this property. And the phone number that's provided as well, you'll be able to receive translation services through, so we can accommodate any questions that you have in your primary or preferred language. All right, so the purpose of this session is to give you a little bit more background information on the available units. We're also going to cover the application process, the eligibility and lottery processes, and then what to expect after the lottery itself. So if you have any questions during tonight's session, you're encouraged to either type them into the chat in the Zoom, or the chat feature in the Zoom screen that you have open, or I'm going to be asking throughout the presentation too. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and unmute yourself at that time if you do have a question. When you came into the meeting, you were muted just so we can keep outside noise to a minimum. We also have Darian and Jean Marie from the management team at Union 346 on the call tonight. So in a few moments, I'm going to open the floor up to them, and they would be able to answer any upfront questions you have about, specific to the unit amenities, the community, the location, all of that sort of thing, because they'll know sort of the ins and outs of the property. As you heard, as you came into the Zoom meeting, this live session is being recorded. It's going to be saved to SEB Housing's YouTube channel, so it'll be there available after this session later on tonight in case anyone wants to review it, or if anybody wasn't able to join us tonight wants to have a look. And then again, if you have any questions after tonight, union346@sebhousing.com. That email address is the best way to get in touch with us, but you can also call us at the number on your screen as well, that 617-782 number. And of course, if you have any questions or any issues during the session, if you have trouble viewing the screen or hearing me, just let me know. So real quick, just want to let you know who SEB Housing is and what our role is in this lottery process. So we're an off-site affordable housing consulting group. We're not the on-site management team for the building. We've been hired by the developer to market these affordable units, conduct this lottery session, collect and review applications to determine an applicant's eligibility, and then eventually run the actual lottery. So in the initial phases of the process, we are your main contact rather than the management office. But then further along in the process, the on-site management team at Union 346 is going to take over as your main point of contact. So there's a few steps in this process. The first being to apply for the lottery. And then once you're found eligible for the lottery, you will be placed into the lottery drawing itself. And during this whole process, SEB Housing can answer any questions you have. We'll be determining your program eligibility, that is for the affordable housing program. And we'll talk a lot more about this in a few minutes, but you'll be given a lottery application number. After the lottery itself, we hold the lottery, I should say, to establish waiting lists for each of these units, each of these affordable units. And if your position on one or more of those waiting lists is high enough, you'll then be invited to complete a program certification with SEB Housing. And that's the point in the process where you would need to submit or supply your supporting documentation. So pay stubs, bank statements, tax returns, that sort of thing. You don't need to submit any of that when you are initially applying for the lottery. And then the third step in the process If you're approved for the affordable housing program by SEB Housing, you'll then be put in touch with the leasing office. And the management team over there will screen you for lease eligibility. So those two screenings are separate. We at SEB Housing are screening you for program eligibility, and then the management office is going to be screening you for lease eligibility at their property. So the lease eligibility may include credit, rental, history, background checks, that sort of thing. And then if you're lease approved, then you've been both program and lease approved, and you would be able to then reserve an affordable apartment and then sign the lease. So those are sort of the three broad steps in the process. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the management team, and you guys go ahead and, if any participants here have burning questions after they've told us a little bit more about these apartments, you can go ahead and chime in now.
Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate the introduction. As Catherine mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, my name is Darian. I am the on-site property manager that will be working with you if you are selected to lease one of the affordable units here. We do have 11 opportunities in phase 2. So pretty much what I'm going to do is kind of go through, kind of explain some of the property specific details, give you a brief description on the finishes inside the home, and feel free after anyone's able to ask any questions that they may have for further detail. So as I mentioned, we have 11 opportunities for phase 2. We have 3 different AMI tiers, a 50, an 80, and a 110. Those will range between unit size studios to 3-bedroom homes. You will still have access to all amenities here within the community. It is split between 2 buildings, so you'll have access to 2 roof decks, a fitness center, complimentary bike storage and bike repair, secured package delivery. So our team will go ahead and manage an on-site package room, so no packages are left on the exterior of the building for security. We do have Martha Low Park located between 2 of the buildings, so that's free of leisure to use. Butterfly MX, so that will be for security for package room and exterior doors. And then you do also have access to the on-site pet spa, which is free of charge as well. And then inside the homes, we do have wide plank vinyl flooring, stainless steel appliance packages, in-home washer dryer, in-home controlled thermostats for both heating and AC. And then residents are responsible for their utility usage, which will be individually metered. That will be electricity, water, and sewage, which the electricity would be set up through Eversource. And then water and sewer would then be set up by our team at move-in. And we also additionally will be a pet-friendly community. We don't require residents to put down an additional pet deposit. We do just charge a monthly pet fee. So we do have a 60-pound weight limit for dogs with a 1 dog per apartment home. And then we charge $45 a month for cats with a 2-cat maximum inside the home, whichever is applicable.
Great. Does anyone have any specific questions that weren't answered in terms of the apartments, amenities, anything like that? Checking the chat here to make sure. Okay. If there's no burning questions right now, I'll move on to how to apply. Unless, Darian, did you have anything else?
No, that should be it. And I will be staying on for the duration of the call. So if anybody thinks of anything along the way, feel free, don't be shy. You can ask us, we're here to help.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Awesome. I'm just going to put myself on mute so that way you can continue the presentation.
Sure. All right. So if you're interested in applying, you can find the application in a few different ways. So this is an online application. that we would prefer that you use unless you have any issues doing so. It's going to be the easiest and quickest way to get your application in. You can find the link to that. I actually had it on the screen a minute ago. I'll put it back up. If you go to our website, though, sebhousing.com, and you click on affordable housing opportunities, and then I want to rent, since this is a rental opportunity, you'll see that there's a page specific or a link specific to Union 346 Phase 2. And then if you click on that, you'll be taken to a page that's specific to this property. It's going to have both a jot form link to the online application. It also has a downloadable version of the paper application if you'd prefer to see it that way, and a downloadable version of the information packet. The information packet just has a lot of information, most of which I'll be going over tonight, but I won't be able to cover everything that's in there. So we do recommend that everybody take a look at that information packet, just because it kind of expands on a lot of the topics that we'll be mentioning tonight. So once you submit, if you submit that online application, you're going to receive a confirmation email pretty much instantaneously. That's just a return message letting you know that your application was received. Later on, once we've actually reviewed your information, you'll get another more personal email from us with your application number. So on our website, you'll see that on the web listing, the application and information packet are available in several languages. So it's listed, it's posted in English, Spanish, Haitian Creole, Portuguese, Chinese, and Nepali. So, feel free to have a look at any of those. If you're completing the paper application, you can submit it to us in one of several ways. You can send it by email to info@sebhousing.com. You can fax it, you can send it by regular mail. All of this information is on the first page of the application. If you're in the Needham area, that's where our office is located. So we do have a drop box if you want to drop it off by hand. But again, we encourage everyone to fill out the online application instead. But, if you have any questions on it, please let us know. Again, there's no supporting documentation needed at this time. So you're going to be self-reporting what your income is. And then later in the process, if you're one of those top households on the waiting list after the lottery, you'll be asked to submit your income, asset, tax documentation, all of that. Applications are due by February 8th at 2 p.m. The online application will actually shut down. The page will shut down at 2 o'clock. So you want to make sure you fill that out before 2 p.m. on February 8th. You do not need to be a resident of Somerville to apply for this lottery. However, all of the affordable units are going to have local preference for residents of Somerville or applicants who work full-time within the city of Somerville. Also, there are some disabled accessible units, and households who require the features of those units are going to have top priority on those waiting lists for those units as well. Union 346 also has a website. So I have the link there on your screen, union346.com, and you can check that out as well. There's additional information on floor plans and that sort of thing that might be interesting to you. There's also going to be some open houses. So I have here that the open houses are going to be Wednesday, March 6th from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then also an open house the following Saturday, March 16th from 11 to 4. And if you have questions about those open houses or anything like that, you can contact us and we can get that information for you. So I believe the units are going to be ready around April 1st. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what we're anticipating, hopefully anytime from April 1st to the 15th.
Perfect. Thank you. And since the lottery itself is not going to be held until the end of February, there won't be much delay at all for anyone to be signing leases, because we still will need to verify everybody's income within the month of March. So they'll be ready right away for you when the time comes and when applicants are approved. So I think we mentioned all of this already in terms of utilities. I do want to mention parking. So there's not much parking at Union 346 Phase 2. There's only 15 parking spaces from what I'm aware, and 3 of those parking spaces are going to be reserved for tenants renting affordable units. And the priority for those 3 spaces is going to be residents that are occupying the disabled accessible units. They'll be given first priority, and then anyone who is interested or who requires parking is going to be filling out a form with the leasing office. If there are more than 3 affordable residents who are in need of a parking space, there's going to be a little lottery that's run in terms of being able to assign those parking spaces. Otherwise, the remaining parking spaces are going to be made available at a 50% discount, which would be $100 a month. And then once those 15 spots are taken up, residents would need to arrange with the city for street parking within Somerville. Okay, so I think there's a couple questions here. Yep, so there's a question, will the emails be coming from SEB Housing? The emails will be, when you submit your application, that's a great question. It will not say SEB Housing, I don't believe. It will have the, wish I had an example that I had sent to myself. It might say jot form. It will say the name of the property when you get that. All emails after that initial confirmation that we received your online application will be from SEB Housing until after the lottery. So yes, it will, whenever you're being emailed from us, it will be from a @sebhousing.com email. Do you accept Section 8 vouchers? So yep, I'm going to get into a little bit about how if you have a mobile housing voucher, the steps that you want to take, things that you want to be aware of. But yep, if you have a Section 8 voucher or MRVP or any of the other vouchers within the state, you are eligible to apply. Okay. So as we said, there's 11 affordable apartments being made available through this process, and they're going to only be available to households that have income amounts at or below 110% of the area median income for the Somerville, Boston area. So the units are available in multiple sizes, multiple income tiers, as Darian said. So there's 50% AMI, 80% AMI, which is the area median income, and 110%. Households who don't already have Section 8 vouchers or MRVP vouchers, housing vouchers, can have incomes as low as $21,500 a year for the 50% units. Or, for example, a 4-person household, in order to qualify for 110% AMI unit, you could have total household income up to $163,200. So there's a wide range of households that might be eligible for these affordable apartments. So the minimum income amounts and the maximum income limits for this opportunity really vary depending on how many people are in your household. We're going to talk a lot more about that in a few minutes as well. But when you're applying, when you're submitting that online application, you don't need to apply for any particular income tier. You don't need to know which one you fall under. You just need to put your income in there, and we will be taking care of that on our end. You just need to apply for the unit size that you're interested in. So if you're interested in a studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, you put whatever ones you're interested in. It can be more than one as well. So say you're interested in both a studio and a 1-bedroom, you would select both of those on your application. And we will make sure that you're placed on the waiting list for the appropriate units based on your household income. Households will only qualify for one income tier though. So we encourage you to apply and list the best estimate of your household income on your application. We'll process your application within a week or 2, and you'll get a notice from us, an actual email from us that confirms which waiting list you will be qualifying for. So if you get that email from us and it says that you qualify for, a 2-bedroom, but you actually think you only applied to a 1-bedroom, please email us back and let us know if you see anything, any discrepancies in the email that you get from us. All right, so the 50% units, kind of talked a little bit about this already, but there are 5 apartments that are 50% AMI. Those are going to be rented to households with household income that doesn't exceed that 50% of area median income amount. There are 2 studio 50% AMI apartments, 1 50% 1-bedroom apartment, and also 1 2-bedroom, 1 3-bedroom. The 3-bedroom 50% AMI apartment is built out for persons with mobility impairments, so it will be considered disabled accessible. And the rents for these 50% AMI units for a studio, it's $744. For a 1-bedroom, $825. For a 2-bedroom, $848, and for a 3-bedroom, $888. There's an additional 4 apartments that are 80% AMI units, and those are going to be rented to households that have between the 50% and 80% AMI. So your income can't exceed the 80% of AMI to be eligible for these apartments. So there's 1 studio for the 80%, there's 2 1-bedrooms, and there's 1 3-bedroom. One of the 80% 1-bedroom apartments has been built out for persons with mobility impairments, so that unit is disabled accessible. And the rents for the 80% units are on your screen now as well. So for a studio, it's $1,416. For a 1-bedroom, $1,609. For a 3-bedroom, $1,890. And then finally, there are 2 apartments that will be made available to households that have income that does not exceed 110% of the area median income. The studio, there's 1 studio, 1 3-bedroom. The rent for the studio is $2,088. And the rent for the 3-bedroom is $2,898. So the affordable rents are not set in accordance to your financial circumstances or your income. So the rents are not going to change based on whether your income changes. So this isn't similar to a voucher in that way. The rent is the rent, and it stays that way until there is a potential rent increase one time per year when the AMI amounts, the area median income amounts, change. Typically, that's in the spring. There's always advance notice. Residents would never have a rent increase in the middle of your lease term. So if you are leasing with at Union 346 in, say April 1st, your rent is not going to change until at least April 1st of 2025. So since we know that there's going to be more interested and eligible applicants than there are available units, since there's only 11 units here, that's why we're having this this lottery process. So I see a couple things have come into the chat here. And so the 3-bedroom at 50% AMI has to be a disabled applicant. So the first priority will be given to a household who requires the features of the unit. And I said there was just the one. There are 2 studios though. So there are 2 50% studio apartments, and well, hold on a minute here. Did I write this wrong? The 3-bedroom is the one that is built out for persons with mobility impairments for the 50%. So the studios, yes, you did ask about the 3-bedroom. So yes, anybody who has a disability that applies for a 3-bedroom and is under that 50% threshold will have first priority on that waiting list. If for any reason the household doesn't take the unit and you're further down the line on that waiting list, you could still potentially be eligible for it. That's the 3-bedroom. And then, of course, there's other units that will not have that same priority. What happens if you get a raise during the course of your tenancy or a second job? Yep, so we'll talk right at the end. I'll mention at recertification that your income can increase. And you could still be eligible, it depends on how much it increases, but you could still be eligible to remain in the apartment if your income has increased significantly. If during the course of the first year you have an income change, you don't need to report that to anybody for any reason. It's just at your recertification that you would need to let the leasing office know when they're doing that recertification of your income before your lease renewal. So nothing would change. Your income change during the year is not going to affect your rent right away or the next month or anything like that. All right, so in terms of eligibility, there's 5 requirements for your eligibility of the affordable housing program. These are in the information packet, and they're explained pretty vigorously in there, but I'm going to go ahead and go through these, and then we'll break down a couple of them. So the first eligibility requirement for the affordable housing program is that households have to qualify based on their income and assets. So I'll show you the parameters for that in just a minute, but basically lottery applicants could be eligible for this opportunity as long as they have income at or below 110% of AMI. The second eligibility criteria is that households can't have more than $75,000 in total assets. And when we're counting your assets, or tallying your assets, I should say, retirement, college, and health savings accounts don't count towards that asset. The third eligibility criteria, households can't own a home at the time of program certification. So if you own a home now, you would need to have sold it and have your name off the deed prior to completing the program certification with SEB Housing. So that would be taking place after the lottery if you're one of those top households. The fourth item to keep in mind for eligibility purposes is that for this particular program, for Somerville programs, unrelated and unmarried household members who are applying together would need to provide verification that they already are living together when you are applying for one of these apartments. So, for example, if you're an engaged couple but you don't yet live together, or maybe you're just 2 roommates that have not roommates, but 2 friends that haven't lived together, you wouldn't be eligible to apply for this lottery. It's kind of a strange, unique stipulation for Somerville, but it's something that is in the information packet as well. So if you're applying together, you would need to have, provide verification that you're already currently living together. That might be a lease that you're both on, for example. And then finally, all heads of household cannot be full-time students. If you are a head of household and you are a full-time student, if there's another head of household, a spouse, a partner, a roommate who is not a full-time student, you would be eligible, but just not we can't have a household for this property that is only full-time students. Okay, so to circle back on the first eligibility criteria, income and assets. So the income parameters are on your screen now. I tried to break it down as best I could because it's on 2 different charts in the information packet. So it's not as easy to kind of read. So since these are affordable units, they're being made available to rent at prices that are lower than identical units within the same property. So there's income parameters in order to qualify for any of these affordable units, and they're set by the city and the affordable housing program. So as you can see here, there's a minimum income for every unit, and there's also the maximum incomes as well. So your income would need to be in between those 2 parameters to apply or to be eligible. So if you're looking at the information packet or your screen right now, you're going to see that if you're, for example, a two-person household and your total income is $40,000, you could potentially qualify for a 50% AMI unit. Another example, if you're a one-person household and your total household income is $70,000, you might qualify for either a studio or a one-bedroom 80% AMI unit. You'll also notice that looking at these income parameters, if your total household income is below $21,500, you're not going to qualify for any of these units because you fall below the minimum income that's required for the 50% AMI unit. The only exception to that, of course, is the mobile housing vouchers that we mentioned. So if you have a Section 8 voucher, you can disregard the minimum income amounts because they wouldn't apply to your household. And that's because the voucher will be assisting with part of your rent, obviously. And any applicant, though, who does have a housing voucher, we always encourage you to check in with the agency that administers your voucher to confirm that the rents at Union 346 are within the agency's payment standards or the maximum rents for your program, your voucher program. The leasing office is going to eventually confirm with your housing authority that the rents are permissible, but of course you'd want to know sooner rather than later if the rents work for you, so you're not disappointed further down the line. Just one question here. If kids go to school in Somerville, leave Medford. My kids go to school. Okay, so if you have children in your household that you're the legal guardian of and they go to school in Somerville, you would be eligible for the Somerville local preference. So you want to indicate that on your application. It's going to ask, it spells that out in the application. That's one of the criteria if you have a household member that attends the public schools in Somerville. So again, there's no verification of income that's required at the time of your lottery application, but if you are eligible for the lottery, we're going to, in the email that comes to you that's sent to you with your lottery application number, there's going to also be a link to a documentation requirements guide. And that guide is basically, it's detailing exactly what type of documentation we're going to need from you later on in the process. So depending on your income sources, how many pay stubs we might need from you, how many bank statements, that sort of thing. So that'll be useful for you to keep for later on in the process. And so although we don't need verification right now, I want to give you a basic overview of how we will need to count your income based off of this program. So income for the program is counted as a projection of your income over the next 12 months for all household members. This includes, bonuses, overtime, maybe those types of incomes that aren't as set in stone for you throughout the year as maybe a salary would be. The only exceptions to that are minors, so someone who's under the age of 18 who's earning a wage in your household. We're not going to count their wages towards your total household income. And then also, if you have a dependent full-time student who's working, we only count the first $480 a year when determining your that person's wages towards your income. We are required by the program to count the gross income, so not your net income. So the amount you make before taxes is the gross. And although, of course, you don't take that amount home, it is required to be counted. And then how we calculate income, too, is not one size fits all. So everyone's circumstances are unique. There could be some of us who are making, a weekly salary, and you get your same pay amount each week. It's consistent throughout the year, but there are others who are self-employed or working seasonally. And in those circumstances, we may need to look further into the past in order to project your anticipated income over the next 12 months. And specifically for applicants who are self-employed, you're going to need to complete a profit and loss statement and provide supporting documentation for your business. If you're self-employed, your business expenses are taken into account when we're calculating your income. But for everyone who is not self-employed, it is the gross income that we need to count. We're not going to be able to, if you're not self-employed, we can't look at, insurance, car payments, that sort of thing. Unfortunately, we can't deduct that from your total household income. So in general, any income that you have been making in the past, we need to assume that you will continue to make it going forward, unless we have some sort of definitive documentation from, say, an employer that's confirming that you're no longer going to be earning that income source. Maybe overtime is not available this coming year. Maybe you stopped working at one of the jobs that you had worked at. They were listed on your tax returns in the past year, that sort of thing. And then just a reminder too, on the application, it's pretty intuitive in terms of, there's a lot of different income sources that are listed for you to choose from. But when you're listing those, just make sure that you have all the income sources in your mind that are coming into your household. So not just wages, but if anybody in your household is receiving child support, Social Security benefits, a pension, workman's comp, unemployment payments, that sort of thing, that should all be listed. There's a question here, can you edit your application after submission? So you can't go back into the application, into a link or anything, but you can email us and we will go into our database where we have all of the information from the job form application submissions, and we will change it for you manually. So you just email us at info@sebhousing.com. We'll be happy to do that. And then just a reminder, this is $75,000 asset limit. So when you're totaling your household assets, we are going to exclude the amounts in retirement, college, and health savings accounts, but you do need to still report those accounts on your application and provide statements after the lottery if you're invited forward in the process. So even though they're excluded, you do still need to write them down or list them on your application. And then if there is income generated by any of your assets, that income is going to be counted towards your total household income. And when you're thinking about assets, it's not just, checkings and savings accounts. We also, would need potentially you to write down, any Venmo, PayPal account balances, that sort of thing. So it gets pretty detailed. What we don't need though, in terms of assets, is personal assets such as jewelry, cars. We don't need you to write those down. All right, so I've covered a lot of the eligibility criteria. And so just a reminder again, if you have any questions, go ahead and either type them in or unmute yourself. I'm happy to answer those as we go along. And I'll move on to the lottery process. So as I mentioned earlier, get that application in as soon as possible. It's less than a month now you have to apply. Again, if you think you'd be interested in more than one unit size, you should put that on your application. There's really no downside to selecting more than one unit size, but there is a potential downside to only applying for one unit size, because then if you decide later on that you might be interested in both a studio and a one bedroom, for example, you're going to be way down the list, or you may not have the same chance to get that apartment. So if you think you might be interested in one or more, please put them all on there. So when we get your lottery application, we're going to review the information and contact you if any of the information appears to be missing or incorrect. And you're going to have a chance to, resubmit it or let us know what the changes we should make are on our end of the database. So if you're completing the lottery application online, soon after you submit the application, you're going to receive that automatic confirmation email. And if you don't receive the automatic confirmation email, it probably means that it wasn't submitted. So you want to make sure that you remember to check your inbox right after you have submitted it to make sure you've got that. I've done a couple of them on my computer to test it out, and it's pretty instantaneous. It comes right back to you within just a minute or so. So if you're found eligible for the lottery, you're going to be sent an email by SEB Housing within about a week to 10 days, maybe 2 weeks, you will get that email from us, and it's going to have your lottery application number, which is in the form of a series of numbers. That is not a ranking of any sort at this time. It's just the number that's going to be drawn in the lottery. So it's meant to be an anonymous identifier. We're not going to be calling out names during a lottery for privacy purposes. So if you're the very first person to submit a complete application for Union 346, your number would be A.0001. That email that you receive from us is also going to confirm whether your household reported being a resident of Somerville, or a household that works full-time in Somerville, or who has a child attending Somerville Public Schools. So applicants will have identified on their, or indicated on their application if they fall into any of those categories, and you'll be required to provide supporting documentation to confirm that after the lottery. So you want to make sure that you're filling that portion out as accurately as possible, so because it will impact your placement on the waiting list. So if, for example, if you mistakenly report that you're a Somerville resident on your lottery application, but you're unable to verify that once you're called from the waiting list, you will then have to forfeit your position on the waiting list because you will not have the same priority as someone who does live in Somerville. Okay, so the email that you receive will also be confirming, I mentioned this earlier too, but it'll also confirm the bedroom sizes that you've applied for. So you want to make sure that you're looking at that email and confirming all of the information that's in there and letting us know if anything doesn't look right. It's also going to confirm if you are requesting a unit that has disabled accessible features. So if that is something that you know that you indicated on your application, please make sure that it's correct on the email you get from us. And then again, the documentation requirements guide will be there. And we suggest that you review that just so you're aware of the documentation that you will need to submit after the lottery. If at any point during the process you're found to be ineligible for the lottery, so say you're over income, something like that, under over income, you'll be informed by email, and we encourage you to contact us with any questions. A lot of times when we have these online lotteries or applications, I should say, maybe someone, added a zero or forgot a zero when they're writing their income, and it's not going to be obvious to us if that figure is incorrect. So it's possible that you would be found over or under income, but just based off of an error on your application. So make sure you're looking at those emails. So the lottery itself is going to take place on February 29th at 6 p.m. There's going to be more information about the lottery included in that eligibility letter email that you receive once your application is approved. But keep in mind that you're not required to be present for the lottery, either in person or by video or phone. The lottery results are going to be shared with all households by the following day. And during the lottery itself, you're not going to know your placement on the waiting list anyway, because we do still need to sort all of the lottery results based on household size, the preferences, and all of that. So while it's a requirement that the lottery is publicly accessible to all applicants in the public, it's not something that is overly useful. It's going to be great for you to see, where you are drawn in the process, where your number is drawn in the process. But again, you won't know where you fall on the waiting list until probably the next day. So it is. I also wanted to mention that if you've been a part of any other Somerville lotteries in the past, we have done them by, we've done them manually, but we have been approved to now start using a website called random.org. So when we do the lottery drawing, it's going to be instantaneous results rather than, pulling numbers from a box as we've done in the past. So the lottery numbers will be randomized on the screen, and the results of each of the drawings will be shared with attendees, either, on Zoom, or if you're in person, you'll see it on the screen there. So in general, it's more beneficial if your number is called towards the beginning of the lottery, but we still need to sort those results by priority, so you're not going to know precisely where you are until a little bit later. So an example of that, if the first 10 application numbers that are drawn or that are on this list, this randomized list, belong to households who don't qualify for Somerville local preference, those top 10 households are still going to be placed on the waiting list behind local preference households because they have priority on the waiting list. So the purpose of the lottery is really to just establish an order for the waiting list. Also, there could be households who are entered into the lottery that might later be found ineligible by either the leasing office, or they might just decide not to follow through and rent the unit. So if you're pretty far down the waiting list, that doesn't necessarily mean that you won't have a chance to rent one of these apartments. So you shouldn't lose hope just because your name is not at the very top. So when you're looking at that lottery results email that comes to you the following day, you're going to find your application number, and then you can see where you fall exactly on the waiting list. So at that point, you have a better idea as to whether or not you might be moving forward to the next step in the process, which would be to submit all of your income, asset, and tax documentation over to SCB Housing so we can confirm your program eligibility. Because remember, up to this point, you've only self-reported your income when you submitted your lottery application. So if you're near the top of one of those waiting lists, that's great, but please don't take that to mean that you should immediately give notice to your current property owner, because you still have a few steps in the process to get through. So following the lottery, SCB Housing is going to reach out to as many households on each waiting list as there are units. So there's 2 50% AMI studios. There's going to be 2 households from that waiting list invited forward. Those households are going to be asked to submit all required documentation to SCB Housing within about 5 days. If not all documentation is submitted within those first 5 days, we will send up to 3 incomplete notices to the household, giving them several opportunities to complete the application. We know that there's a lot of information that's required and verifications that are required to be sent in, so we work with you throughout the process to make sure that you understand what's pending and all of that. If the household, though, is not able to complete an application after the 3 extension notices, there will be a letter of ineligibility issued, and your position on the waiting list at that point would be forfeited. So if you see an email from us, just make sure you're replying to it. If you have a question on what is listed in the email in terms of pending documentation, please let us know. And then, of course, throughout the process, just in general, we're available for any questions. And then following the receipt of any ineligible or denial notice from SCB Housing, there is a chance to appeal denials. The resources for those appeals are in the denial notice that would be received, and then they're also in the information packet as well. So I also want to mention too that sometimes SCB Housing is contacting households who aren't yet at the top of the waiting list. We might be just asking you to provide verification of residency in Somerville for local preference. We're just kind of trying to get ahead of the process to speed up the leasing process to make sure that you're eligible for that part of your application before we move forward. If you are found program eligible by SCB Housing, you'll be issued what we call the proceed letter, and you'll have 5 days then to reach out to the leasing office over at Union 346. At that point, you'd be beginning the 3rd and final step in the process, which is applying for a lease. And again, the leasing process is separate from the program certifications that households will have already completed with SCB Housing. That lease screening, again, is going to include, rental application, credit, background, reference checks, that sort of thing. And so that's the point in the process where it's beneficial to have that top position on the waiting list, because you will always have the first choice at available units on your, since say you're on the studio 50% waiting list. If you have that top position, you're going to have the first choice at reserving one of the affordable units. Even if someone behind you on the waiting list maybe finished the lease screening process before you, the waiting list order still needs to be honored. So you'll be able to tour the units, make a decision based off of whatever factors are most important to you. Maybe you wanted to be on the 3rd floor. Maybe you wanted to, have a lease at a later time. Whatever it is, you'll have that first priority. And then we'll move down the waiting list. The second household on the waiting list would have second choice, and so on. And then any households who fail to respond to the leasing office, any deadlines that are given by the leasing office as well will be issued that similar notice of ineligibility. So after you've gone through the whole process, you've leased one of the units, you're done with screening, with income screenings until your lease renewal date that I mentioned a little bit earlier. So at that point, we hope that you've enjoyed living at Union 346 and you want to continue living there beyond the first year. If you do, you will just need to recertify your income with the leasing office prior to your lease renewal. So we had a question about this earlier, but upon lease renewal, if your income has increased and it's now above that initial 50, 80, or 110% AMI, that's fine. Households can remain eligible for the affordable housing apartment as long as the household income doesn't exceed 140% of the current year's AMI. So for 110% units, you can remain eligible for as long as your household doesn't exceed 120% of that year's AMI. So it's a little bit different for the 110% units, but generally for 50% and 80% units, you can make up to 140% of that year's AMI. The actual numbers for those renewal amounts are page 16 and 17 of the information packet. I didn't have them here on the slides though. So I think we have one question in the chat. How long is the waiting list for 3 bedrooms? So we don't know yet. The waiting list will be compiled after the lottery. So right now I know that we have a lot of applications that have come in over the first few days of marketing. And, once the lottery happens, everyone who was approved for the lottery will get that lottery application number. All of those numbers will be randomized in the lottery, and the waiting list will be available hopefully the next day after the lottery, so March 1st. And they'll be emailed to everyone, every applicant, and you'll be able to see where you fall on each of the waiting lists. We do, typically for Somerville lotteries, we're looking at hundreds of applicants on each of the waiting lists, with the exception of the disabled accessible units. There's usually only a handful of applicants who have requested a accessible unit, but for the most part, there is a lot of interest in Somerville lotteries, both because it's Somerville and because there's the 3 income tiers, because it's kind of applicable to a wider range of people in the area. So that pretty much covers what I wanted to get through that's in the information packet. I'm going to go back on this slide here just so you have the link to the online application. Again, if you're interested in this property, applications are due February 8th by 2 p.m. And, great opportunity, very popular lottery, doesn't mean that should dissuade anyone. If you're interested in this property, you definitely should apply. The online application is very easy. It will only take you, a few minutes to go through. And yeah, if you have any questions as you're going through the application, or if you have, you've submitted one and you want to change something, please let us know. That email again is the info@sdbhousing.com, or actually info I didn't even put on here, but there's a couple ways to get in touch with us. info@sdbhousing.com is our general email. You can also email union346@sdbhousing.com. That's a specific email address for this property because there will be so much email traffic about it. So a couple questions here come in. So the lottery will only pick 11 application numbers. Nope. So in the lottery itself, everyone's application number will be given a place on the waiting list. But there's only 11 units. So it will never just be, or in my experience, it's never been, we screen 11 applicants for 11 units. There's always people who drop off, who don't want to rent, who don't qualify after the fact. So we'll likely be screening many more than 11 households to fill these units. But yeah, again, during the lottery, everyone will have every lottery application number will have a place on the waiting list. What if you work full-time and are a full-time student and a one-person household? Are you still ineligible? Unfortunately, if you're considered a full-time student at the school that you're attending, you would be ineligible. That's a great question, though. Yes, unfortunately, in this lottery, not in all of our lotteries, but in these Somerville lotteries, you would be excluded. Anything else? If you're a part-time student, you are eligible, just to throw that out there for anyone listening who is wondering about that. All right, again, you have about a little bit less than a month to get that application in. This is the link again, but if you go to our website, sdbhousing.com, and you navigate over to the Union 346 link, it has this drop form link, and then also a paper application if you prefer that way. And we look forward to getting your application.
I do just want to share too, we did things a little different this lottery. We do have a drop box here at the property at 346 Somerville Avenue. So if anybody lives locally and wants to request a hard copy, we can print it here in the office. Or as well, if you print it out yourself online or at a local library, you can bring the paper application here to our office and drop it off right out front. There's a drop box right located at the front door. If not, you can always email it to SEB Housing, or you could mail it directly to SEB Housing at their Needham office as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for that.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks so much for attending, and I appreciate. Oh, hold on. Thank you. Just a thank you came in.
No worries. Thanks so much, Catherine.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a good night.